Big Basket Now presents RCB Bold Diaries.
Hello and welcome to a very special discussion on the journey of women's cricket and what's shaping up to be the biggest women's World Cup ever. It's not just another tournament, we are talking about an era of unprecedented growth, so much of attention and at the same time respect for women's game. Today we are diving into everything that's put women's cricket on the global map. Is it the origin stories, the breakthrough moments, the Women's Premier League, how much of a contribution has that got to do with women's cricket? We're going to be dissecting all of this with three journalist friends of ours who've not just witnessed but also documented a lot of these milestones along the way. We have Ashish Pant from ESPN Cricket Info. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We also have Karunya Keshav. She's an independent cricket journalist. We also have Suresh Desha, who is here from Sportskeeda. Guys, on a morning gathering to talk about cricket unabashedly, could we have asked for a better start?
Most certainly not. I think this is just about as good as it can get, especially 3 days out of the World Cup. I'm really excited and looking forward to it.
Another World Cup in the offing. How pumped are we for this one, Ashish?
It's going to be huge. Just with the growing numbers that we've seen in the last couple of years and leading up to the World Cup and the sudden sort of clamor about who's going where, what's the kind of cricket Jamima is playing or Smriti Mandhana is playing. People didn't used to talk about that. But now there are statistics, there are numbers being looked at. Somebody like a Shriyanka Patil, she's, in the last couple of years, her growth has been immense. So just looking at the kind of cricket that is being played by the women's, Sri Lanka just won a Women's Asia Cup. So all of these teams are evenly matched. A lot of these teams are evenly matched. So yeah, it's going to be a huge World Cup, this one, yeah.
Are we looking at the highest record numbers ever with T20 World Cup women's category as such?
I think so. According to the ICC numbers, every time there's been a World Cup, there's been a massive rise. Last time from 2020 to 2023, there was a 44% increase. Asia Cup recently, in final, India versus Sri Lanka, again, massive numbers. I think finally the women have gone from just athletes to superstars, and we're going to be watching a bunch of superstars in action for India in Dubai and Sharjah.
It's going to be tough to sort of beat the numbers that were there in Australia. I mean, 86,000 people turned up for the final. But if you look at the cumulative numbers, I think we're going to see a lot more eyeballs on the screen, people talking about it. And also I'm very curious how much crowd the UAE can draw. And I'm positive that there'll be a fair number of people turning up.
Right. Surya, anything for you to add in terms of the biggest ever in terms of numbers?
I think it goes without saying, especially from a viewership point of view, this could certainly break records. As Ashish said, I don't think the crowd turnout of 86K can possibly be beaten because it's the MCG we're talking about. But cumulatively, as he mentioned, and I think from a viewership point of view, we could see new records being set because the popularity is at an all-time high now. And there are so many factors which I'm sure we're going to be touching upon as well that have played its part. And from the last edition that was in South Africa, I think that was very well received. This one promises to be bigger than that potentially. So I won't be surprised if we see the number just continuing to grow exponentially and possibly a new record being set from a broadcasting perspective.
Karunya, you have been writing about women's cricket for over a decade now. You've seen the lows to the highs and how. Talk to me about the growth story of it all and how you've seen a shift.
It's truly been surreal. I remember watching Sophie Devine at the same Chinnaswamy Stadium play one of the best innings of her life. And there must have been like 5 people in the stadium watching her. It was a record knock that day. That was back in 2015. 2016 T20 World Cup also. Not too many people. Last WPL, the whole stadium was chanting her name. Everyone's chanting for Smriti. This Church Street was full of people just celebrating these women. And that is so lovely to see because not just the current set of players, but generations before them have worked so hard to bring the game here. Things could have died, when the tours weren't being organized. Now, women's cricket in India is about almost 50 years into its organized history right now. It could have died. There were the whole 5-6 years when no tours happened. There was no money for the association to run it until BCCI took over. The BCCI itself took a while to understand how to grow the game. But now that a lot of things are clicking into place, it's just so incredible to see that work is being valued, that skill is being valued, and the potential is also now we're seeing it flourish.
Yeah. At one point of time, to what the calendar was of a women cricketer to now being packed in so many venues and so many leagues as well, Ashish.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, if even say 5 years back you would have asked, say, a Harmanpreet Kaur, she would say, we have no cricket to play. There would be like 6 months of gap between one international to the other. And now suddenly they are talking about a packed cricket calendar. Even now, if you talk to anybody, any of these players, they will say that the more the merrier. Because they've gone so long not playing for stretches here. And now they have the Women's 100, they have the WPL, they have the WBBL, there's a Super Smash. There's so much cricket all around and all for it. I think just touching upon your previous point, the tipping point with regard to women's cricket coming into the fore was, I think, the 2017 ODI World Cup where India qualified for the final. It was heartbreaking, definitely, for India that they lost to England. But I think that sort of brought to women's cricket into everybody's imagination, and people thought, listen, this is also India. These are also Indian players, so why not back them? And Karunya was there. She was covering the game. She was covering the World Cup, and I think that brought a lot of eyeballs, a lot of people to the game, to the women's game. Yeah.
Right.
Now, that was really the watershed moment in Indian women's cricketing history, because just as we talk about, say, Kapil Dev's innings in the 1983 World Cup and how that changed the landscape of men's cricket, I think Harmanpreet Kaur's 171 is taken in the same breath. And right after that knock, there was a buzz everywhere, and the only chatter that you could hear as far as cricketing conversation was concerned was India can win a World Cup. And they came very close, of course, but the fact that conversations started, and since then there's been no looking back. We've been having these conversations regularly with women's cricket, discussing strategies or how the team has been performing and tracking players not just in India but overseas as well. I think that was certainly the moment that tilted the landscape completely, and it's only been growing onwards and upwards.
Speaking of landscape of Indian women's cricket, the WPL will get mentioned one way or another. Let's talk about what the WPL has actually done for women's cricket, and has that changed the landscape completely?
You could have just come to one of the RCB games and you'll know what it has done. 25, 30,000 people watching a women's game is unheard of. Even outside of India and a lot of international games, you won't get this kind of crowd. But I saw the first game here, and the kind of ovation Shah Rukh Khan got, the similar kind of ovation Smriti Mandhana got. I mean, you can imagine how surreal it must be for Mandhana, for people to be shouting her name, for somebody like an Elise Perry being deemed this. Of course, she's the best cricketer there is,
The GOAT, yeah.
all time, I'd say. But the kind of ovation she got, that moment where she hit the scar,
The glass pane.
Broke the glass. It became viral on social media. You just don't get such kind of numbers, such kind of viewership. So the WPL's created an immense sort of imagination of what women's cricket can be, say, 10 years down the line. And I think this is a brilliant start.
Right. I think a lot of the cricketers also attribute the fact that WPL has changed their life for the better. Karunya, what do you have to say about the WPL and its contribution?
I think there are two aspects that we should look at. One is perception, and the second is skill. The WPL, the biggest thing it has done, it has changed how we look at female cricketers in India. They are on prime time. They are marketed along with the biggest names, the biggest brands in India. You see their photos on billboards. For a parent who's thinking about sending their 6-year-old, 8-year-old to a sport, cricket finally becomes an option, which is not looked at, this is not something girls can do. That is the biggest change. That is the mental change that happens. You talk about the money that is coming in. Finally, it seems that, okay, maybe there is a life that we can build out of this. We have seen so many of these youngsters who are part of the team right now, who have changed their families' lives. We have someone like Radha Yadav, who has really helped her family come to a better place in life. And parents understand that. So that is the perception. Second is the skill, and that is what will help us win a World Cup. We need the WPL to put these girls under moments of pressure. We need them to benefit from the same kind of training, the same kind of planning that an organization as big as the RCB or Delhi can afford. Expose them to different kind of players, expose them to different kind of situations, because that's how you get better at sport. The more you play, the more you get better at sport. And when you have a camera trained on you, you're going to do even better. You're going to understand what it is to be that hero. And I think the WPL has made heroes of all of them. And we definitely need to be grateful that that's finally in space for it to happen.
Yeah, I mean, so many stories of individual players who turn out to be inspiration for a generation to come. Asha Shobhana's story, the story of so many cricketers has been inspiring in so many ways. Surya, what do you have to say about cumulatively the WPL, what that's done to cricketing landscape overall?
I think it's massive because women's cricket in India was craving for a league of this kind that could not only put the incumbent superstars into the spotlight of the public, and the spotlight that they deserved a lot more than what was in existence before. But as you said, the kind of stories that have come through, be it Asha, be it Sajana, and you now see someone like Vrinda Dinesh, who's relatively unknown. She gets into the auction, and on the back of solid domestic performances, she becomes a household name overnight. And I think what that's done is it's given hope to a number of budding kids and girls to be able to pick up a cricket bat or a cricket ball, and that yes, they can make a living out of it. Because somewhere around, I don't know if I can use the word stigma, but women's cricket in India, a girl playing cricket, the perception was definitely not
What's the stereotype at one point of time?
It certainly was. You always thought cricket was a man's sport, but it never really was the case, because funnily enough, the first ever cricket World Cup was a women's World Cup in 1973. The men played 2 years later, but very few people knew that. But because of the WPL now coming into the spotlight, and obviously you see the benefit that it has for players. First up, they get to play in front of packed houses, and between the last World Cup and this World Cup, if we're just talking about how it improves India's chances, I think they'll be better prepared to tackle pressure situations, because they're now more used to playing in front of big crowds. And obviously rubbing shoulders with the best in the business. We spoke about Elise Perry and Sophie Devine. So many superstars who played the WPL, even across other teams, be it Alyssa Healy, Sophie Eccleston, Grace Harris. You can just keep naming them one after another. And I'm pretty sure playing with and against them has only improved their skill even better. And it has just made them better prepared for any situation that may come in front of them when it comes to a big game or a pressure game.
Right, the graph is definitely moving upwards.
Also, the money is a factor. It's definitely a factor. I mean, we can say that it's brought about more cricket on the screens, and there is suddenly a lot more people watching. But money is definitely a factor. Minu Mani, one of the all-rounders, she had her house ravaged in the floods a few years back in Kerala, and all of this sudden the money that has been pumped in has helped her get back into her feet. And the same with a lot of other cricketers who come from not so great backgrounds, and suddenly the families are now understanding that, cricket is a sport that women can also take up. And you just have to go to the different academies that are around in Bangalore, and you'll see suddenly there are so many young girls who are now stringing up, and that's incredible.
Yeah, the talent that has been unlocked, and we see what it does to a cricketer who is from a hinterland, getting to rub shoulders with the best cricketers from around the world. And I think only the platform like WPL can make that happen. Let's also talk about the timing of the WPL coming into the foray with other leagues around the world, and the contribution of BCCI in the mix of it all. Surya, I'd like to start with you.
It's been immense, because I remember the whole process. The concept had been in the initiation process for quite a while, but once they swung into action and they found the right timeline to get it in, things have just moved along pretty rapidly. I mean, when India left for the T20 World Cup in South Africa last year, I think we saw that there were 5 franchisees, RCB being one of them, that had come into the fore for the WPL. But by the time they were back, they were already linking up with their teams and they were ready to hit the ground running. And we saw those wonderful clips as well, where they were watching the auction together in South Africa and they were cheering for each other as well. So I think the timing couldn't have been any better simply because of the fact that I think that was when women's cricket was really picking up. Obviously, a couple of years prior to that, there were other hassles as well to deal with, like the pandemic. But once things settled down, I think the BCCI swung in straight away and put their plan into action. And it's reflecting in the kind of popularity and the turnouts as well. We had, of course, the first season take place entirely in Navi Mumbai and Mumbai. But this year it's gone to Bangalore, it's gone to Delhi, and you're seeing the kind of turnouts. Even Chennai had pretty good turnouts when you saw the women's international match take place. I think the test match had pretty decent turnout. So it just tells you how the popularity has spread throughout the length and breadth of the country. And the way the BCCI has marketed it, really, a lot of credit must be given to the office bearers there for really putting that plan into action. And you can very clearly see that the results are showing as well.
Karunya, you have seen multiple initiatives, I'm sure, over the time span of you covering women's sport. But talk about BCCI's initiatives and what that's actually done for women's cricket.
You mentioned Asha Shokna. We know about her from the WPL for the last 2 years. Indian cricket, everyone else has seen what she can do for the past 10, 15 years before that. The systems that were in place is all thanks to the BCCI and the parent associations. So that work is still happening. Can there more that can be done? Sure. We need contracts. We need more employment opportunities. There's lots that can be done. What has happened is that these players, since the BCCI took over around 2005, they've had access to incredible facilities, which is the same that the men have access to. These players are prepared for the T20 World Cup at the NCA, where the men prepare. They've had camps after camps, fielding, fitness, yoga. They've asked for a therapist. They've got that therapist. And all this has to come from a parent organization that is really listening to its players and is valuing that input. And that is something that we've seen, especially over the past few years, where the BCCI has taken an effort to be seen to be doing things that are important for the women's game. There's been equal pay, equal match fees promised, which is, again, a big step. You could argue that the contracts are still different, so it's not fully equal. They don't play the same. But just the fact that the men and the women are paid the same amount to wear India colors, that's a mental switch. And that is important, which we have been seeing in bits and pieces, especially over the last few years.
But also what they've really done well of late is organizing all of these A tours. Like India A recently went to Australia. That was unheard of even, say, 3 years back. But to organize these tours, to make sure that these cricketers get acclimatized to the conditions, that's been really, really paid by the BCCI. Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a more streamlined process now, and you can just see that there's a clear plan, and it's pretty much on autopilot, and it's functioning a lot smoothly. So it's taken a bit of time to get there, but now that we are there, it's happening in quite a synchronized, streamlined manner, and that's great to see.
Let's focus on the Indian cricket team right now. They are on a mission, and the T20 World Cup is about to begin in a few days. Harmanpreet Kaur made a statement that this is one of the strongest squad ever. What do you have to say about the promising team and what the scope is looking like for this team to go and deliver?
Yeah, it's a huge statement to make, but I feel that the reason she said that was because she actually believes in it. Indian women's cricket has forever been known for its constant chopping and changing. But if you look at the team right now, they had a very similar squad for the South Africa series, a very similar squad for the Women's Asia Cup, and they're now taking it to the World Cup, which I think is one of the biggest changes that has happened, to have the consistency. Even if someone is not doing well, say for example, Dayalan Hemlata, she hasn't been scoring as many runs as you'd expect, but they've stuck with her. They've not added another spinner, just thinking about the UAE conditions. They've not if one of the fast bowlers have not been doing well, they've not just plucked them out of the team. They've said that, listen, this is the core 17, 18 people that we have, and we're going to pick from there. So I think Harmanpreet realizes that these are the 15, 16 players that might do the job, and she has full confidence in them. And the thing is that the Indian cricket team currently has all their bases covered. They have a bunch of all-rounders. The top order and the middle order is firing. The spinners are probably one of the best in the world, and they have 2-3 very good fast bowlers. So yeah, I totally understand where she's coming from.
Right. Karunya, would you say this is the strongest squad ever?
I see why she says that. I don't think she means it in terms of any particular talent. I'm sure there are big names that would have made the team a lot stronger. I think it's about the preparation. That's been the strongest. It's about their mental preparation, where they're used to the pressure. They've made it a point to take on yoga and have a therapist along. The scheduling, planning, everything that Ashish mentioned, the stability, I think that's what makes a team strong going into a World Cup, and I think that's what maybe she's acknowledging. Let's not take names here about who would have made the team stronger, but yeah.
But I think the Women's World Cup definitely brings back memory from 2022. The team has made appearances in 4 semi-finals as well. So how is it looking this time around, Surya?
Look, I think the chances are definitely bright. The thing is, they're obviously grouped in what you might want to call the group of death. Some pretty strong contenders over there. But I think this is a team that doesn't just have it in them to go to the semi-finals alone, but probably go that extra step, make it to the final, and also break that hurdle at last, and end that wait for that long-awaited quest for that trophy. It might just finally be fulfilled. I think 2024 has been that kind of a year as well, where you're seeing a lot of redemption stories, be it in franchise cricket or in international cricket. The men obviously won the T20 World Cup, so there's belief that maybe the stars are aligning this time. And I think they've got the squad and the materials as well the material to be able to go that distance too. So, when Harmanpreet made a statement that this is the best Indian team that they've had, I'm 100% on board with that.
They need to dance in this group of death. I like the group of death. We are talking about Australia, there is New Zealand, Sri Lanka. Which team do you think will be the biggest hurdle for Team India, Ashish?
I don't count out Pakistan as well.
Yeah.
In conditions
going to be a blockbuster.
which is quite close to home.
Yeah.
And they've played on these kind of pitches for the longest time. They have the kind of spinners. It is definitely the group of death. You have to say Australia are the biggest challenges, not for India, for everyone. But the one thing they have to be wary of is Sri Lanka. The last 15 years, it's been an incredible turnaround for the Sri Lankan team. Earlier, it was Chamari Ataportu or bust. That was what Sri Lanka cricket was all about. But suddenly, in the last 15 months, you've seen Harshita Samaravikrama coming up. The youngster Vishmi Gunaratne is there. The bowlers have sort of been really doing well over these last few years. They've brought in Inoka Ranavira for the World Cup. She's an experienced bowler. She's an experienced campaigner. So don't count Sri Lanka out. And they are on a high, having won the Asia Cup.
Yeah.
So that is one team I will be really, really wary of.
Just to add to what Ashish said, that game also happens in Dubai in the evening. So we don't know the conditions. We don't know how bad the dew is going to be. Yeah. And if the toss is just going to have a really big impact on the game. So I have my eye on that game.
But is there any particular team, KK, that you would say India needs to be wary of this competition?
It's tournament cricket, so it could be anybody. You're also playing in grounds that you're not fully comfortable with. The Australia game definitely is something to look out for, because I think the first one they play in Sharjah, and Australia already have plenty of experience of Sharjah conditions by then, and that's the last game of the group. So a lot could ride on that game. We'll have to see. So the last two games, I think, with Sri Lanka and Australia are something I really want India to get a good start, so the pressure is off for those games.
Right. And almost any team picks up and performs on a big stage like the T20 World Cup. And we're talking T20 here. So it's anybody's game on that particular day.
Look, it's hard to look past Australia, but the thing is they've got 3 matches preceding that. And ideally, if they get off to a good start, they start against New Zealand, and then there's the big one against Pakistan, which is always going to attract a lot of eyeballs, and there's always going to be a different kind of hype and buzz around it. And I'm pretty sure it'll come with its own set of challenges, even though India have had the wood over Pakistan in recent times. And I think this is why it's called the group of death. In a World Cup, there's no easy game. Every game comes with its own set of challenges. You lose one match, and then suddenly you're looking nervously over your shoulder if any other team is starting to catch up. But the ideal scenario, of course, would be to try and win as many as you can and just ease your path before, say, you run into the tournament favourites, Australia. I mean, we can be honest about the fact that Australia are the tournament favourites, and this has been one of the greatest cricket teams to have ever played, period, irrespective of gender. So that is, of course, going to be a different kettle of fish. But I also believe that if there is one team that can potentially stop Australia on its day, it is India. You know, they've done it before. The 2017 semi-final, the ODI World Cup semi-final, where Harmanpreet played that all-timer. In 2020 as well, the first match of the tournament, Shafali Verma scored a half century and India won that match. It's a different story that the tables were turned in the final. But I think on a given day, if there's one team that can stop Australia, it is India. And I think they're just much better prepared this time around. They've had 2 WPLs between the last World Cup and this one. And I think that's going to make a big difference in terms of playing a high-stakes game.
Let's talk about what actually makes this team tick. If we are to get into the details of the strengths and the weaknesses of Team India, Ashish, I think you did mention about how the team seems to be well-rounded, but what is the biggest strength of this Indian cricket team? And if you are to point out a couple of weaknesses that cannot be rubbed off.
I think the biggest strength of this team is the variety in their spin bowling attack. So there's Dipti Sharma, who relies a lot on loop and flight and trying to outfox the batter. She can bowl in the power play, she can bowl in the death overs. So she's omnipresent, right? And then there's Shianka Patil, who is who is a little quicker in the air, and she'll try and get a lot of LBWs and bowls. She bowls wicket to wicket. Asha Shobna is your leg spinner. Radha Yadav provides the left arm angle. So I think that the whole variety that is there in this spin unit and in the conditions which might aid, spinners, I think that is one of the biggest strengths that India have here. And if I talk about the weaknesses, I think they are lacking a finisher. Yes, there is Richa Ghosh, but she's also relatively new in the international circuit. It's a big stage. So just to rely on her and Harmanpreet, and if they don't click, I think that might create a problem, because you never know about the dew, you never know about the conditions. So you might need that extra 15, 20 runs at the end. So one of those areas they need to probably cover up here.
A finisher could help. Would you agree, Karunya?
Yeah, at the same time, I think we've been looking for a finisher for a long time, and it's great to have Richa there. I think what Jemima is doing in those late overs is also pretty interesting, because she's playing according to the situation, and she can do that really well, whether she needs to take her time and then quickly get those runs towards the end. I think the middle order is looking okay. Yeah, you'd love some more firepower, but with Dipti Sharma there as well. If it's a middling score, which is what I think we're expecting in UAE, they might be okay. I think the coach made an interesting comment saying that this is the best top order that we can get, or the best bat. And I think that is kind of true. There is a fair amount of variety. Everyone has an idea of their roles, and I think that is what has made a difference to this team. Weaknesses, well, according to the team themselves, they say it's the fielding. That's something they've worked on in terms of the athleticism that they want to achieve. I think we've seen India leak a few runs, especially during the Asia Cup as well. So yeah, and these grounds in UAE are pretty large, Dubai especially. So hopefully they'll be able to buck up on that.
Yeah, just seal all the leakages of runs and work on the fielding is something that they have openly spoken about, and hopefully that happens. What do you think, Surya, in terms of opportunities for Team India, considering the team's biggest strength and weaknesses?
So I think when it comes to opportunities, I think whoever takes up the number 3 spot has a massive opportunity to really lead the way with the bat, because I think that stems from the fact that we've not really settled in on a number 3. There's been a few players tried in that role. As recently as the warm-up match, I think we saw Harmanpreet Kaur herself go up to number 3. So is that the way forward is something I'm very intrigued to see. But personally, I'd advocate for Jemima Rodrigues to bat there, because I think she is the most versatile batter in the team, and she's probably got the most versatile skill set to be able to play that role either towards the end of the power play or especially in the middle overs, because she is the best when it comes to rotating strike. And playing very few dot balls. And I think that's going to play a huge role. And for me, there's an opportunity in terms of how you can maximize what Jemima Rodriguez and Richa Ghosh bring, because the difference between, say, scoring a 160 and a 180, which you might need again on some of the flatter decks and again some of the more powerful batting units like Australia or England, if you progress to the knockouts, is going to be those 20 runs. And I think that's where Jemima and Richa could be the players who could make a big impact. But one advantage the team definitely has is a lot of depth. So I think that's where it could just unshackle the top order to go and play a more cavalier brand of cricket. And I think therein lies the opportunity to try and push the barriers of how much you can score. If dew becomes a factor, you will need those extra runs. And especially when you know that fielding is not necessarily your cup of tea. If your batters can offset it and they can give you a score that is 10 or 15 above par, then your bowlers automatically have that extra cushion to work with, especially if someone from the opposition has a good day. So I think that's something that they'll probably be focusing upon. But the depth that the team has, I think they could have Shreyanka Patil batting at 9. And if Arundhati Reddy plays, she could bat at 9 and Shreyanka at 10. And that is a lot of depth. You can't ask for better batting depth than that. So it could just free up the top order to go hard from the outset. So that's something I'm looking forward to.
Overall, a formidable unit. I'm going to put you in a little bit of a spot right now where I'm going to ask you to pick a player who's going to have a massive impact for Team India. Who would it be? Surya, let's begin with you.
I'm going to say Jemima Rodriguez. I think her power hitting in particular just was at a whole new level this WPL. I think she batted at 4 or 5 for Delhi, but she was able to hit out from the word go. We've always known her to be an excellent player of spin with her assortment of sweep shots. But she's also someone who knows how to rise to the big occasion. In the Commonwealth Games final, we saw her have that big partnership with Harmanpreet. It was Harmanpreet and Jemima, in fact, who put India on track in the semi-final against Australia last year as well. So I really think that we are yet to see her peak. Yet she's been in brilliant form. She's been scoring a lot of runs, even on difficult wickets. And on her day, I think she is as destructive as she can get. And I think she could be the difference maker this time around, because she's going to be playing a very important role, either at 3, 4 or 5. And she's going to have a lot of deliveries to face.
Karunya, what do you think? One player who you think will really set the bar or the benchmark for Indian cricket in the T20 World Cup this time?
I'm really looking forward to what Richa Ghosh can do. Again, I think they've been quite clear about what they expect from her, and she's had plenty of experience trying that at the WPL. We know those, last ball, last over chases that she had to do quite a bit during WPL. We know that she didn't manage it against Delhi, but Jemima herself came up to Richa and said, this is learning. This is not a failure. This is learning. And I'm really hoping some of that learning can pay off at the World Cup.
We know she can hit the big ones. She can be destructive. And it's going to be interesting to see how many big sixers come off that bat. Ashish, what do you think? A player that you're keenly observing and watching out for?
I think Dipti Sharma is going to play a big role in this World Cup. She's taken a game to a whole new level in these last couple of years. She was always a really good bowler, but just the kind of batting she's been doing, the kind of finishing that she's been doing, she didn't always have those big shots in her armory, and that suddenly come up. And I know for a fact because I spoke to her last year, and she said she's been like hitting 1,000, 2,000 balls every single day just to improve her power hitting, and that's showing in a game. If you look at the recent performances at the Women's 100, she was incredible, especially with the bat. You always know that she will come up with the goods with the ball, but she's improved her offside play, she's improved her power hitting. So I think Dipti Sharma will be one of the most important components in this team.
Time now for the $1 million question, and it is to how India is going to place in this T20 World Cup, and where do you think India will see itself in the tournament? Surya, you did mention that Australia is definitely favorites, but I hope you have a different answer for this.
I said this earlier as well, that 2024 has been a year of redemption, and we've seen a lot of sweet redemption stories. And I think if it's destined, then this could be the year. And I just have a feeling this probably could be the year that India break that barrier. I'm not jinxing it, by the way. I'm just making it clear. But yeah, I think I said this last year as well when we spoke about the men's World Cup and we were previewing it, that once you get to the knockouts, you need to have a couple of good days, especially in T20 cricket. You need some luck as well going your way. And I stick by that. I think if things fall into place, and look, if they start well, then that momentum is only going to carry them forward, and their confidence is also going to soar. And at some level, they will believe that yes, we're getting it this time.
Karunya, what do you think? Year of T20s, can we make it 2 out of 2?
See, as journalists, you're not supposed to believe in jinxes. So, but I'm still not going to say India because I don't want to jinx it. I think they are really well prepared. We spoke about Australia. We haven't spoken about England. I'm actually really afraid of meeting England at a knockouts. Maybe I'm just scarred after 2017. I don't know. But I would be very wary of the English threat. If that happens, then I think India do stand a good chance. And let's hope it's the year of redemption for everyone.
Yeah, without saying much, Ashish.
Yeah, this could go incredibly wrong, and I hope it does not bite me back. But I think India are going all the way.
Keeping our fingers crossed, and let's see how this goes. Before we wrap this up, guys, I'd want your opinion about the future of Indian women's cricket and how it's all going to go from this point on. We did speak about how it has risen over the last few years. The catapult and the way it's risen has been monumental in so many ways, which is great for the sport. But how do you see this progressing from here on, Karunya?
I think the future is waiting to be written how we want to write it. We do not need to follow the same path that the men have done. As women's cricket, we don't need to emulate everything. We don't need it to be at the level that men's cricket is. It can be its own sport. It can be its own ecosystem. Having said that, I think it's on all of us also to understand how we can support and why we should be supporting it. Obviously, no one's obliged to watch women's cricket. But once you do, I think it's nice to see what it offers, the various stories that we hear, and how we can sort of embrace all of that. And I think that's what the future is. It's all of us are part of that future.
True. Surya?
I think women's cricket in India is writing its own story. You know, they say that it's her story too. They're carving a niche for themselves, and I'm pretty sure that sky is the limit because we've seen the growth of women's cricket in India over the last 18 months reach an all-time high, or the rate at which it's growing. I know that the steps or the baby steps towards putting that ecosystem into place for women's cricket in India, it was pretty slow. I'd probably stick my neck out and say that it was a little snail pace too. But once the system was brought into place, you're only seeing it shoot up. And I think there is no limit perhaps to how far this can go, and this will go. I mean, it goes without saying, the kind of popularity that we're witnessing, reach the masses, the kind of revenue it's generating, it is still a process. It's a continuous process because it's only piling up cumulatively, and it's only getting bigger and bigger. So I don't see a particular glass ceiling as such, and it's just going to keep soaring onwards and upwards. So I think in a few years' time, probably if we were to sit and have another discussion and look back at this day, we'd probably be looking at a number of watershed moments, and we'd probably be thinking, yes, we saw this coming, but we probably didn't imagine that it would be as big as it is. And I won't be surprised if that's the way it turns out to be in the future.
Right. The wheels have been set into motion. We see a lot of cricketers training who are women. Coaching camps are filled with young girls who are training. How do you see the future of women's cricket?
I've always maintained that men's cricket and women's cricket are two very different sports. Men's cricket has a lot of brute strength, it has fast bowling, it has all sort of things. But women's cricket is a lot about skill. It's about how much swing can the bowler generate. There's not a lot of pace. Shabnam Ismail will disagree, but there's not a lot of pace. There's a lot of skill. There's that old school looping of the deliveries. So I think people have started to embrace that. And as Surya said, sky is the limit. women's cricket is growing, and it is growing at an unprecedented rate. And I think it will go the same way.
From the way women's cricket rose to where it is right now, and the future of women's cricket truly looks promising, and we are at the cusp of it all with a big tournament like the Women's T20 World Cup that's coming up. We've had such an insightful discussion. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time, being here and talking about cricket. Let's see how the blockbuster matches go on. We'll be rooting for Team India, of course, and covering it, and look forward to all the milestones that are going to be achieved. Thanks once again for being part of this discussion, guys, and let's keep rooting for Team India and see the flying results that are going to be coming out.
Big Basket Now presents RCB Bold Diaries.